Okay, so the physical activity topic in sociocultural studies, then quite a broad specification content. We've got to look at physical recreation and outdoor recreation, PE and outdoor education, and sport. And there's some key phrases and terminology to be included in this specification. So the danger is that many young people and older adult, people are like these characters over here. We live in a very technological world, or we just are inactive. And there's a phrase that you need to know for this, and this is called sedentary lifestyle. So if people are inactive, they have a sedentary lifestyle. So we're looking at physical activity and what different elements of physical activity we can participate in to ultimately, hopefully, improve our health and well-being. And I've done an umbrella here for a purpose, because physical activity is understood of as being an umbrella term, and what we mean by that is it encompasses a range of different sort of things. So physical activity is any activity that increases heart rate, and it could be physical recreation, outdoor recreation, PE, outdoor ed, or sport. All of these are types of physical activity, and they're a little bit different in that they come on a continuum which varies between how casual and flexible and fun things are. So physical recreation is typically done for its own sake, for fun, whereas sport at the other end is very structured, very organised and highly competitive and done to win, essentially. So we've got different kinds of activities all under the umbrella of physical activity, which range from one end of the continuum to the other and have different characteristics, and we need to look at all of those characteristics. Also, from this image on the right here, we can see going from childhood to adulthood, you can do physical exercise via perhaps play, things like going to swimming classes or cycle safety classes and be healthy and active, or you can be inactive. You can grow up having a healthy lifestyle and understanding how important it is, or remain inactive and perhaps suffer from obesity. Ideally, we want people to take part in physical recreation, maybe go to the gym, and if you don't, then there's a possibility you might get breathless jogging. So we've got to try to include as much activity as we can for young people and young children to build the habits that will make them physically active adults. And here are some terms that you really must understand and use, be able to define. Physical activity, balanced, active, healthy lifestyle, and then there's a separate video for that. Lifetime sport and lifelong physical activity. Here are our 5 subcategories of physical activity and exercise, which is a little bit different. And we'll go over these really quickly now. When you look at these, you need to be able to give a definition. You need to be able to state some of the characteristics of each of those terms, give an example, explain any benefits of doing those activity types, and perhaps explain any barriers that might come about from them. So here are our fundamental terms. Physical activity, any activity raising heart rate above normal, and it's an umbrella term including those 5 activities. Exercise, a little bit different. Bodily movement produced by skeletal muscles that results in energy expenditure, and exercise typically has a health and fitness focus, so anything that burns energy, which is about health and fitness. Lifelong physical activity, so activities which people do for fun all the way through their life. So they might do gardening or rambling, it doesn't have to be a sport. And lifetime sport, so again, sport specifically that are enjoyed throughout life. So lifelong and lifetime physical activity and sport. So what's the difference between these images here? We've got physical recreation, so done for fun, done when you want to. It's the choice of the participants what they do. It's not particularly strict in terms of rules, whereas physical education is learning about movement, learning about the body, learning. You can take examinations in this. The focus is on learning, slightly different. And again, what's the difference between outdoor recreation and outdoor education? So similarly, recreation in the natural environment is about doing these activities for the fun and pleasure of doing them, whereas outdoor education is about learning through and about the natural environment, learning new skills, learning new activities. So again, for the fun is recreation and education is for learning. So what's the difference between physical recreation and sport? Well, we've established this is for fun, it's very flexible, there's no rules, it's very much leisure. Sport, you can see from the image here, very defined kit, competitive, very committed athletes, lots of training involved, much greater demand, less flexible, more structured. So we've got some characteristic differences between those, and several questions come up in the exam paper asking you to describe the differences between let's say recreational cycling and recreational cycling and cycling as a sport. So very quickly then, physical recreation defined as a playful attitude in a recreational environment. And these are the characteristics: fun, flexible, limited competition, non-specialist leaders, so you don't need a coach or a captain to take part in a fun game of beach volleyball. It's inclusive, it's about getting everybody involved, and it's controlled by the participants. There's no sort of significant rule structure, and it's all about amateurism, taking part for the love of it. Physical recreation. Outdoor recreation, using the natural environment to enjoy fun physical activity. So it's exactly the same concept as physical recreation, but it's about enjoying the activity in the natural environment. And here are the characteristics. As I said, the same as physical recreation, but because of the natural environment, we've perhaps got a sense of adventure, perceived risk. We don't, equally we don't need to have specialist leaders, so you can go cycling in the countryside, just on your own. But it perhaps about respecting the natural environment, appreciating the natural environment. A lot of people will go walking to just enjoy being out and about it with nature. And there's an element of self-reliance and freedom when you're in the natural environment. Physical education then, defined as learning of physical, personal, preparatory and qualitative values through formal physical activity in school. So we've got a formality to this, and learning is the other key word. So here are some characteristics. The focus is on education and learning. It's compulsory for young people to the age of 16. There are sub-disciplines, so as you are studying anatomy and physiology, sociocultural history, there is some theory and practical elements to it. At school you have the national curriculum as core time, so you have to take part in a certain level of physical activity. You must have specialised qualified staff, and you tend to use specialised facilities, and you might have examinations in physical education. Outdoor education then, learning in and about the outdoors in a natural environment with educational values. So it's pretty much on a parallel with PE, but about learning in the outdoors, or sort of a scenario situation, so semi-natural. Here are some characteristics, same as PE, but there is perceived risk. So climbing up the climbing wall, you might have an element of fear, but actually you're quite safe. You perceive a risk, but you're not actually in danger. You absolutely must have specialist staff, and it can be done in natural or semi-natural surroundings. And what makes it sometimes so thrilling, or so much the challenge, is that the surroundings might be unpredictable. If you are learning on the river, the environment might change, the weather might change, there's a level of unpredictability to it. But it's very much constrained in some ways, or reliant on safety factors, so that's a big consideration with outdoor ed. Sport then. Unorganised, competitive and skillful physical activity requiring commitment and fair play. So organised, we know that's the extreme from physical rec. Competitive, again extreme, and skill. We must have skill and ability to be competing in any sport, and you've got to be committed to all the training and the match fixtures, and ideally play within the rules, offering fair play and sportsmanly behaviour. So characteristics, the focus is on winning and competing, There can be support, so you might have coaches or sports scientists to support you. Each sport has a national governing body which creates the rules and the structure for competition. There might be specialist terminology and equipment, or technology and equipment. Commercialism and professionalism might be appropriate, so you can have sponsors and might give you money for winning or for taking part. It tends to be more exclusive, so it does rely on a level of physical prowess, and that's a phrase meaning skill. You can't just be rubbish and compete at a high level, so it's exclusive to those that are capable enough. It requires commitment and effort and physical endeavour. There are very defined spaces, times and rules that when you do these sports, there's an aesthetic quality, so the top athletes look really natural when they play, and there are some behaviours, so sportsmanship, gamesmanship and deviance associated with sport. So here's very quickly a table summarising the definitions and some examples of those 5 physical activity types, which you can pause and have a look at. Just to finish then, I want to look at some key terminology that I've used and you will need to be able to define. So, physical endeavour, what actually does that mean? Well, it's a phrase that means the effort that you put into physical activity, and particularly into sport. So endeavour means effort, and perhaps you can remember from the E and the E. Physical prowess then. So physical prowess actually is a phrase that represents being skillful, or how skillful an athlete is. Again, perhaps a bit more associated with sport. So endeavour and prowess. And then 3 terms, a couple of these I think you probably will be able to recognise. Hopefully you will perform your sport with this behaviour in mind, that you are sportsmanly and you play within the rules of the game and there is fair play. So it could be shaking hands or kicking the ball out if somebody's become injured, that kind of behaviour. Then we've got gamesmanship. So football seems to be riddled with this. It could be sledging in cricket. And gamesmanship is when the rules are bent but not broken. So somebody just tries it on a little bit or influences it, but they don't break rules. So gamesmanship. And then we've got our other extreme, deviant behaviour. And you might see from this example, this is when athletes actually break the rules of sports. So 3 bits of terminology here in terms of sports people's behaviour. Sportsmanship is what we want. Gamesmanship's not very pleasant and is frowned upon but isn't breaking the rules. And deviance, which absolutely is breaking the rules. It's essentially people cheating.